Wind howled, trees swayed, groaning. A storm brewed, shadows stretching long and thin. The old-timers knew this place, whispering pines. They told tales, hushed voices around crackling fires, stories of things unseen, things unheard but always felt, not just stories, warnings. Stay away when the wind whispers through the pines, they'd say. Stay away when shadows grow long, but warnings like whispers fade. New stories, new warnings, needed telling. The pines had stood for generations, silent sentinels in the face of time. They had seen it all, the good, the bad, and the unexplainable. Their roots ran deep, intertwined with the very fabric of the earth, their needles whispering secrets to the wind. And the wind, it seemed, always whispered back. It was a place of beauty, undeniable and haunting. A place where the veil between realities felt thin, where the mundane bled into the supernatural, and where fear itself was as tangible as the gnarled branches that reached out like skeletal fingers. The old dirt road, barely visible in the gathering gloom, snaked its way deeper into the woods. Two figures, silhouetted against the dying light, made their way along its path. They were young, their laughter echoing through the trees, oblivious to the watchful gaze of the pines. The air grew colder as they walked, a dampness clinging to their skin like an unwelcome embrace. The laughter faded, replaced by an uneasy silence broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. The first drops of rain began to fall cold and insistent.
Do you ever get the feeling we're being watched?
It's just the wind, Sarah. Just the wind and the trees. But even to his own ears, his words lacked conviction. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone.
There, nestled amongst the trees, its windows dark and lifeless, stood a cabin. It was small, barely more than a shack, its paint peeling and its roof sagging under the weight of time and neglect. Yet it exuded an almost palpable aura of menace, as if it were watching their approach with malevolent intent. The wind howled around them, whipping their hair across their faces and sending shivers down their spines. The rain was falling steadily now, each drop exploding on the dry leaves with an unnerving crackle. They stood there for a moment, their breaths caught in their throats, debating whether to turn back.
We should keep moving, whispered Sarah, her voice trembling. This place, it feels wrong.
But curiosity, as it so often does, got the better of them. They approached the cabin cautiously, their footsteps slow and hesitant. As they drew closer, they noticed that the door was slightly ajar, as if beckoning them inside. The interior of the cabin was dark and musty, the air thick with the smell of decay and something else, something indefinable yet undeniably sinister. Dust motes danced in the faint slivers of light that pierced the gloom through cracks in the boarded-up windows. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. Mark, his heart pounding in his chest, reached out and grasped her arm, his grip reassuring. Their eyes slowly adjusted to the darkness, revealing the remnants of a life long lived and abruptly ended. A rocking chair creaked softly, its motion barely perceptible in the shadows. A sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut with a resounding boom, plunging them into absolute darkness. Panic welled up inside them, threatening to consume them. S1. Mark's voice echoed through the empty cabin, but there was no reply. Only the sound of their own ragged breathing and the incessant pounding of their hearts. S2. Hello? The air grew heavy, charged with a palpable energy. It felt as if the very walls were closing in on them, suffocating them with their unseen menace. They stumbled back, their hands outstretched, their fingers brushing against rough-hewn logs and cobwebs thick with age. A low moan, barely audible at first, seemed to emanate from the very air around them. It grew in intensity, swirling around them, a chorus of tormented souls trapped within the confines of the cabin. The boy and girl clung to each other, their eyes wide with terror. The temperature plummeted, the air growing frigid, biting at their exposed skin. The stench of decay intensified, filling their nostrils, choking them. Something unseen brushed past them, its touch icy cold, sending waves of goosebumps erupting across their flesh. They were no longer alone. They knew it with a certainty that chilled them to their very core. Something was in the cabin with them, something ancient and evil, and it was toying with them.
S1. We're trapped. Narrator. Panic seized them. They had to get out, to escape the suffocating darkness and the unseen horrors that lurked within. They stumbled towards the door, their hands blindly searching for the latch, their minds filled with images of unspeakable terrors. The door wouldn't budge. It was as if it had been bolted from the outside, trapping them within the cabin with whatever awaited them in the shadows. They rattled the handle, their desperation growing with each passing second, but it wouldn't yield.
Mark, his own fear threatening to overwhelm him, tried to remain calm. He knew that panicking would only make matters worse. He scanned the room, his eyes darting from one shadowy corner to another, searching for anything that could help them escape. That's when he saw it, a small window, barely more than a hole in the wall, partially obscured by a tattered curtain. They scrambled towards the window, their hearts pounding in their chests, their breaths coming in short, ragged gasps. Mark pushed against the rotted wood, his muscles straining with the effort. For a moment it resisted, then gave way with a splintering crack. They squeezed through the opening, one after the other, tumbling onto the rain-soaked ground outside. They didn't stop running until they were well clear of the cabin, their lungs burning, their legs aching. They didn't dare look back. Even as they made their way back to the familiar safety of the road, the memory of that night, of the unseen horrors that lurked within the cabin, stayed with them. The whispers on the wind, the creaking floorboards, the icy touch of the unknown. These were things they would never forget. And they knew, with a certainty that chilled them to their very bones, that the Whispering Pines held many more secrets, secrets best left undisturbed.